I'm noticing a pretty disturbing trend within the gay community, and it's that a lot of gay men seem like they want to distance themselves from other part of the LGBTQ plus community. And specifically, I'm talking about transgender people, gender nonconforming people, and non-binary people. It's something that's really been on my mind. It really bothers me. I have a lot of feelings about it, so I kind of wanted to get those out in a video with you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about what I think is going on here and also why I feel like it's really problematic and not good for us as gay men, but also just the LGBT community at large. Before we dive in, I want to give you guys a quick update just about the channel and about this video. I am not using a script for this video, which is very unusual for me. I feel very uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I do have some bullet points and some talking points on my phone just so I can sort of stay on topic, but I don't have a whole script written out. The reason for that is I want to try to be more authentic and show more of like my personality and my true self to you guys. And I find that when I'm using a script, although I really like that it keeps me focused, I find that I do seem a little, when I watch it back, I feel a little robotic and like I don't recognize that person. So we're going to try something new. I'd love to get your feedback in the comments about what you think about this video, if you like this style. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys that update. So let's get into the purpose of the video. So what is going on here? Why do I think gay men are wanting to distance themselves from the broader coalition of LGBT, particularly the trans movement? I think the biggest reason has to do with the political and social environment we're living in, both here in the United States, but also abroad. In the United States, obviously Donald Trump has been reelected president. You have this sort of uptick of anti-trans bills that are being proposed and in some cases passed through state legislatures. You also have the recent Supreme Court decision in the UK that defines, I think it was the legal definition of, a woman as being, referring to biological sex for the purposes, I think, of like civil rights protections. And I think in this, this is not conscious, but I think subconsciously, I think a lot of gay men are seeing this and feel fearful that the government could start coming for our rights, or that public perception could start to turn against gay people the way it has with transgender people. And so I think a lot of this backlash from gay men to want to sort of separate ourselves from the rest of the LGBTQ community is rooted in fear that people could come for us, could come for our rights. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the general political and sort of social backdrop that's going on, not just in the United States, but abroad too. So I think that's probably the biggest reason. In addition to that, I do think there are some economic things going on. There was the whole thing with Target, right, where I think they had like some Pride items for sale and they got a lot of backlash. Then they pulled the Pride items and then that upset a lot of people. And so I think, I've heard of some Pride, parades and events and things getting like defunded, organizations pulling their donation dollars, not wanting to be affiliated with LGBTQ plus things. And I think there's this perception among at least some gay men that the reason people are kind of turning on the community is because of transgender people, trans activists, non-binary people, that type of thing, which I don't think is accurate. That's a whole different video, though. We can do a separate video about that if you want to hear my thoughts on that. But I do think that is people's perception, is that the tide is changing and it's because of transgender people. And so gay men want to be separated from that, or at least some do. So why is this a problem? Why do I find this deeply disturbing and problematic? First off, I think it's important to note that we wouldn't have the rights we have as gay men if it wasn't for trans women, particularly trans women of color, drag queens, gender nonconforming people. We really have built our rights and our platform in the gay community to where it is today on the backs of those people. So it doesn't make any sense in my mind that we would now abandon the people who helped us get here, who stood in solidarity with us. I'm thinking of events like Stonewall, for example. The second reason why I think this is really problematic has to do with intersectionality. So a lot of gay men, there are different kinds of gay men. For example, there's transgender gay men, right? There's bisexual men, there's bisexual trans people. And so people don't always fit just neatly into just the G in LGBT, right? And so when you try to parcel that out and separate people and put them in these really tight boxes, it just doesn't work. Intersectionality is always going to exist. It especially exists in the LGBT community, and there's just no way to completely separate and detangle all of that. The LGBT community is not a collection of monoliths, right? It's a web of overlapping identities. It's always been like that, and it's always going to be like that no matter who doesn't like it or wants to change it. Number 3, I think we are weaker politically and socially when we are not a united front, right? And I think this is interesting because going back to my point in the beginning of the video, I think a lot of this backlash against transgender people is related to that gay men are concerned that we're going to lose our rights or we're going to lose our place in society, right? And I understand that fear, that's a human fear, right? But I think in acting out of fear and in being reactive, I think we're putting ourselves more at risk as gay men in terms of our political safety because we're stronger when we're together, when we can pool our resources, our money, our political resources, our lobbying resources. When we can be united in all of that, we have more ground to stand on. And this, by the way, I just want to say, this is a common tactic you see in society when it comes to minorities, right, is this sort of divide and conquer ideology. So one example of this is with Latino and Hispanic people, right? We see this politically in the United States anyway, where people try to pit, documented immigrants or, Hispanic or Latin people that are American or are citizens or whatnot against those who are undocumented, right? And they try to create this divide in the Hispanic and Latin community. And I think it worked somewhat effectively, particularly if you look at the 2024 election and the election of Donald Trump. A lot of, or not a lot of, I shouldn't say, but more Hispanic and Latino people voted for Donald Trump than ever before, right? And I think that some of that is because this rhetoric against undocumented immigrants was powerful and was salient, and it worked to some degree for people. So this trying to separate minorities and divide us against each other, this is a common tactic that's been used throughout history. And I think it's important for us to have our eyes wide open about that and to be aware of that. While we're on the topic of political power, this actually is a good segue into my next point, which is related to erosion of our rights over time. So civil rights gains are not permanent. They're not guaranteed, right? We've seen this with the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the United States, right? I do believe that gay marriage, the Obergefell versus Hodges Supreme Court case, will probably be overturned at some point in the next 5 years or so. That's my prediction, right? And so civil rights they're not permanent. And what threatens one group, so what threatens transgender people also threatens us, right? It's them today and it's us tomorrow. And so if we don't stand up for our transgender friends, if we just cast them aside and don't want them as a part of our community, don't want to care for them, don't want to defend them, make no mistake, they're coming for us next. I also think it's important to remember that community in general is not about sameness. It's not about uniformity, right? Building community, in my mind, is all about shared values, right? And so for the LGBTQ+, I would like to think our shared values are that everybody should be safe, everybody should have civil rights, everybody should be able to exist as their most authentic self, right? Those are the shared values that we have as LGBTQ plus IA. I don't know the whole acronym, to be honest with you, but that's what we all have in common. And so community is not about being the same, right? It's about having shared values. And I think that is important to note. It's not just about being gay or gay men. It's bigger than that. And that's anytime you're trying to build community in general. And lastly, and the final point I'll just say is I also think we have a moral obligation, in my opinion, to stand up for and respect other parts of the LGBTQ plus community, particularly trans people, it's just the right thing to do. And as gay men, as a group of people who have been so discriminated against throughout history, we of all people should understand what that feels like. And I just think it's the moral and the empathic and the correct thing to do, in my opinion. And on that note, I'll just say before we leave, I do think that this group of gay men that wants to separate ourselves from the LGBT community, I do think that this is a vocal minority. So I don't think most gay men feel this way. I am concerned about it. I do think it's problematic. It's worrisome to me, and I do think it is a rising trend that I'm seeing both online and in people I know. But I do think the vast majority of gay men still support the LGBTQ community remaining one community and being totally inclusive. I just think it's a very vocal minority online, in the press, in the media, that are sort of bringing this idea into the zeitgeist. So I do think it's important to note that. But I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you think about all this? Please let me know down in the comments. I'd also, if you're a subscriber of mine, if you've been here for a bit, I'd love to know, what do you think of this style video? I'm sorry if I was like rambling or, not as coherent as normal, because again, I didn't use a script. Did you like this kind of unscripted, more raw, off-the-cuff version, or do you prefer my videos to be sort of highly polished and scripted? Please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to get your feedback. Have a great day and take care. Bye-bye.